one of the most important stories of the week, I think, is somehow not making its way into the mainstream media, of course. And that one is the Jeffrey Epstein document dump that took place in the state of Florida. Now, it has to do with his case in Palm Beach County. Many of you guys are very familiar with it. It's the one where he got that sweetheart deal and did about a year and a half in jail, but we'll go into that in just a moment. But thanks to Governor Ron DeSantis for signing legislation, which now makes that grand jury transcripts available to the public. And that was something they didn't want you to have access to, because now we know specifically what prosecutors knew before they cut him that deal. And it's absolutely disturbing and infuriating. I have to say, when I read through all 176 pages of this transcript, I was enraged. And so you're going to hear that come out in a little bit. But I have to warn you, it is very, very graphic, and this is not meant for children to listen to. So if you have kids in the room, I recommend you hit pause for a moment, because it does get very, very graphic. Now, before we go through each of these pages that I flagged for your attention, I want to tell you the corporate media did an awful job at covering this. If you go to any of their websites, it looks like they only read the first few pages, that they missed the core of these transcripts, and that's what I'm going to dive into. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it is detailed in these transcripts that he did rape little girls. And that is what I want to drive home. And that was the infuriating part, because they all missed it. There is literally a victim who testified in front of the grand jury, and she describes a day before her 18th birthday, which Jeffrey Epstein, she claims, was well aware was almost going to be her 18th birthday. He raped her the day before her 18th birthday. This man is a horrible human being. They should have never taken a plea agreement. He should have been in jail for the rest of his life. But Florida prosecutors, with the federal government, obviously, it's so infuriating. They obviously just didn't care enough. And that's just really what this all comes down to. They gave him the opportunity to go back out and reoffend. And well, we all have our beliefs as to why that took place. So let's dive into some of the most important pages that I want to flag for our audience. Let's go to page 4. Now, page 4 is interesting because it details how detectives were alerted by a stepmother as to what was really happening here. She was the one who initially kind of blew the whistle on all of this when she found that her stepdaughter had $300 in her purse. Now, that's obviously very alarming for a teenager to have that amount of money. And so that is why she alerted Palm Beach detectives. Now, ultimately, we're going to go through this because this young girl did testify. And again, because they are minors at the time, their names are redacted from these transcripts. But this young girl did get into a fight at her school. And that's what we're going to go to in just a few moments. Now, again, it's interesting to note that these transcripts really do highlight what I want to get to in the next one. This is most of these girls did not tell Epstein their age. Now, I say most because some of them do say that they did tell Epstein their age. They, in fact, worked through assistants and told assistants that they were 18, but they were told through the people who were recruiting them to come see Epstein and give him massages at his Palm Beach home. They were told to say that they were 18 years old. Ultimately, obviously, Epstein knew they weren't, because he was asking them questions, according to them, about, high school and their career goals and all of that before he did egregious things to them. But again, this document that you're seeing right now on your page shows, did any of the girls ever tell Epstein that they were under 18? And then in the testimony, it says, not to my knowledge. And again, I believe this is from the detective in all of this. But then again, one of the witnesses, one of the victims, did say yes, that she did tell him, and that they did talk about how she was going to be 17, she was about to be 18, and she was 17 at the time of the rape, and that he actually bought her birthday gifts. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's turn to page 9 of these transcripts. Again, a victim told to lie about her age at great length. She is saying that she was told to lie and that she complied. And so she did lie about her age. And there were several phone calls that were being made to assistants of Jeffrey Epstein. One of them in this one is labeled as Sarah. Sarah was asked about how old these girls were. Who were supposed to be just giving massages, according to them. And they were told over the phone that these girls were 18, but we all know they were not 18. Page 15, it's all about the recruitment, and I wanted to get to that as well. So Jeffrey Epstein did, and as many of you guys are probably well aware, he did in fact pay a lot of these girls, according to them, $200 to bring in their friends from the high school. So he knew that they had friends. And on this transcript page 15, you were going to see that they did just that. Now, a lot of these girls thought they were just giving him a 40-minute massage for just a couple of $100. And they weren't told until they got into the room that they had to either be completely nude or in their bras and panties. Let's head over to page 16. Again, that assistant that I mentioned to you, Assistant Sarah. Assistant Sarah is now asking again about those victims' age, and this is the dialogue between that and the girl who recruited the victim who's about to testify in front of the grand jury. She is saying that they called Jeffrey's assistant. She doesn't remember her name, but again, we learn later on through the transcript that her name is allegedly Sarah, and that Sarah did ask, I had to be 18, and so she told the woman, I was 18 over the phone. That's the recruiter. And then again, then they go into, okay, well, come over to the house and let's do the massage then tomorrow. So that was on page 16. If you go to the next page is page 21 of the transcript. On page 21, the assistant tells the minor to undress. Now, she brings the minor into the home of Jeffrey Epstein, where Jeffrey Epstein shakes her hand, as they detail. And then they go into the massage room, where the assistant rolls out this massage table and then tells the girl to get into her bra and panties only. Now, the girl apparently did not know that and was very kind of caught off guard, but she did later comply with it. No, I thought it was going to be a massage, like you keep your clothes on, the girl says in her testimony, allegedly. And then she goes on to saying that that she had to, in fact, take off her clothes and then to stay in the room for a couple of seconds, and Jeffrey Epstein would be coming into the room. It goes on to say. Now, again, all of these pages are going to be available for you guys at home to read. If you head over to my Substack, the best way to find that would be over at BriannaMorello.com. And then there's going to be a link to my Substack page, which this will all be available at in just a few moments. Now, let's head over to page, let's see, this is going to be the Epstein offers girl money. So one of the girls felt very uncomfortable, and Jeffrey kind of sensed that. And so he asked her if she was willing to be making a couple of extra $100. And then she says in her testimony, I said, sure. And then he asked, like, I have to, like, you're not going to give them massages anymore. It's going to be something different. So he's telling her it's going to be something different. I was like, well, what is it? And then he was like, can I use okay, so this one gets a little graphic. This one is about him asking to use a vibrator on the victim who's testifying. And ultimately, she says okay to make more money from Epstein. So he goes on to saying, okay, and then he uses the vibrator on her, and he is apparently masturbating as well at the same time. If you go to page 30, it details exactly just that. So he offered you the extra $100. You had a pretty good idea what was coming next, right? And that's what she's being asked on the stand. Yes. Okay. Yeah. When you say jerked off, what do you mean? And then they go into graphic detail saying exactly what jerking off means. And then he says, you could see his penis at this point. And she goes, uh-huh. And then the prosecutor again is asking, is that a yes? And she has to verify saying that's a yes because she's testifying in front of a grand jury, so your answers need to be clear and decisive. And again, a couple of seconds maybe, and then like 40 seconds. And then the massage was over, is what this girl is saying. So he did expose his penis to her. She's detailing just that. Now, if you go to the next page, which is page 38, which I've highlighted, that victim, after she left the home, she was paid, and so she left. And at first, she was just happy to have the money, and she describes during her testimony that she spent it over at TJ Maxx, and she had a good time with the girls that she came in with. Then this girl apparently arrives at her school and allegedly goes and tells one of her friends, tells her friends about Epstein. Says, if you're ever looking to make extra money, let me know. And this friend thought it was very strange, obviously. And she tried to make it seem like it was just massages, but obviously her friend knew exactly what was going on here. And then they went, and this person went and told everyone in the school. So now this girl, this victim who's testifying, is upset because she looks like a prostitute. And that's kind of the rumor that was circulating around the high school that she was attending. Again, we don't know what the high school is. We don't know the details of this victim because it is all redacted, rightfully so. But ultimately, when she found out that this girl was going around telling people of her business, that she did this to Jeffrey Epstein, it later leads to an altercation at school when they confront one another, and which then escalates into a fight. And the principal of the school gets involved in this. And that's where that stepmother that I introduced to you in the beginning of this comes into play, because the principal asked for that money. The $300 was in her bag. She did alert the parents that there was $300 found in the bag, which is very, very strange for a girl who is 16, 17 years old at the time. So we're talking about 18 years ago, just about. So again, that is a lot of money for a child to have on them. Now, when you go to page 48, victims say, 48. The victims say she knows what she did was a crime. So ultimately, she's on the stand right now, and they're asking her if she was aware, specifically, you're aware that you committed a crime. And the witness said, no, now I am. I didn't know it was a crime when I was doing it. And then, like, I don't know. Now I have to guess it's prosecution or it's prostitution. And then, so these are girls, and they're just really upset by it. So the prosecutor again is asking these questions regarding just that, and she does admit that she knows it's a crime, but she did not know at the time when she was complying with Epstein that she was committing a illegal act. Now, when you jump forward to page 127, another victim testifies that Epstein paid her $200. Now, again, these testimonies came between several of the victims, as well as the detective on the case was testifying to what he heard when he was interviewing a lot of these individuals. So when you go to page 127, this one, like I mentioned, is all about another victim saying that they did get money. I gave him a back massage, and that was more or less, it was my first time. Okay, did you take off your shirt when he asked you to? And then they say yes. Was this the only item of clothes he took off? Yes. Did he give you the money for the back massage at first? Yes. How much? $200. Again, another victim confirming that there was $200 given to her by Epstein. Let's go to the next page. This one being on 129. Epstein raped a teenager. And this is the part that infuriated me. Obviously, the entire thing is infuriating, but this one will send you into a fury. Prosecutors knew that Epstein raped girls, and they knew because they spoke to one of them. This girl, who's now testifying in front of the grand jury in this transcript, specifically says that Epstein raped her the day before her 18th birthday. She was 17 years old. The age of consent in the state of Florida is 18, so this is statutory rape. And yet again, prosecutors did not rightfully prosecute him to the full extent of the law. So again, this time, this woman is saying that he did ask me to get fully naked, which I did. He asked you to touch him, but I said no. Oh, he did. And then it goes on to saying, okay. So then it goes on to saying, on this occasion, the last time that they engaged, they did have intercourse. So this victim, what I just mentioned to you about, who was raped on her the day before her 18th birthday, she did meet with Epstein several times, is what she admits. She's embarrassed, but she admits it. She said it was a day he raped her. He said, how old were you? It was a day before my 18th birthday. Prior to actually having intercourse, what happened? She's asked. Were there any sexual acts either performed by you or performed by him? And then he said he would touch himself. Again, the masturbation comment coming up again in this whole test transcript. And you flip over to page 131. The victim testifies again. Let's see. He was talking to her and he was asking her about school and what he was going to do when this girl grew up. He knew you were in school? Yes, he did. Did he know your age? Yes. Did you tell him that you were 17? Yes. When was this? The first time I was there, I told him how old I was. Okay. Did he have a problem with that? The girl answers back. He did not have a problem with that, obviously. Okay. Let's go to the last time, whether it was 10 or 15 times when you had him penetrate your vagina with his penis. Yes. How did that come about? He told me to lay down because he was going to crack my back, what she had done before. And then it just sort of happened. So she's detailing that he raped her when he had her lying on her stomach. If you go to page 134, okay, did you want Epstein to be charged with the crime? Obviously, because he raped her, right? So she's being asked, did you want him to be charged with the crime after he did this to you? And she wrote, honestly, I really don't know. And that's kind of just how she ends it off. Okay. Then the victim goes on to saying, after a juror in the grand jury wants to question her regarding that that rape, we should say, she said, You did not want to have intercourse with him. The witness answers no. A juror. Did you ask him to stop? The witness says no. A juror. Why? The witness. I'm not really sure. A juror. Do you think he took advantage of your youth? The witness. Maybe. But it was also stupid of me to put myself in that situation. A juror. Perhaps you were too young to be up against a man who obviously is in his 50s to have control over what you knew. The witness. Yes. A juror. Do you feel it's wrong of him to take advantage of you because of your youth, pretty much? And the witness then goes, yes, I do. Again, this girl was raped the day before her 18th birthday. Epstein knew this. He knew this. And so he's going to sit there and pretend like he didn't. But this witness goes on to say that he actually gave her a birthday gift. She details a digital camera that was provided to her. If you go to page 58, we're jumping around a little bit here. On page 58, Epstein allegedly told another victim to take off her clothes. Now, beforehand, and this is why it's important for us to highlight this, beforehand, the other victim, the first one that we detailed who testified, she specifically said that she was asked by the assistant, Sarah. But now we have Epstein telling her to take off her clothes before giving the massage. Again, $200 is what she's claiming she was paid as well. And so that is very, very telling. Now, when they go back to talking to the Palm Beach detectives who were investigating all of this, there's something called a trash pull, and that's what they're going to detail in this next page, page 51. A trash pull is when you make arrangements with the sanitation department to have an empty truck and just go and pull their trash exclusively into that truck so that detectives could legally go through their trash. And so detectives were on to Epstein, obviously, like I mentioned. And you don't have to have a search warrant for it because it's trash. It's discarded. It's trash, what's detailed in this. So they did orchestrate it with the truck to get this going. So this is back in 2005 they're detailing for you. Do you know what you found in that trash? Now, it's interesting because one of the victims, and I should disclose this as well, before she left, after the first time meeting him, before she left his house, he asked her to write down her name and how he could contact her, so her cell phone number. So what's interesting about that and why that's so important to note is he apparently never spoke to her after the incident took place because she's the same girl who got into that fight at her high school and her phone confiscated and everything. And obviously there was an intervention that took place. So she doesn't know if he ever made an attempt to contact her. And several of these victims say that they can't tell if he made an attempt to contact them. But this is the telling part because during that trash pull, it looks as if they found several messages with phone numbers written on them from the girls. And they all had different messages on those pieces of paper. Now, obviously, Epstein was writing all this information down and having them hand over that information, but some of them he threw out. So you just have to think, was he trying to make these girls feel special as if he was going to ever call them again after he did these egregious things to them so that they wouldn't be kind of disgruntled as they were heading out the door? Or was he just tossing them because he just felt like throwing them out? But eventually, those were the contacts that detectives were able to go reach out to later after they got them in his trash and were able to locate more victims. Now, if we head over to the next slide, which is going to be Epstein said, okay, so this one has to do with recruiting. So when Jeffrey Epstein asked one of the girls to recruit for him, there was a girl who was 23 years old who was being recruited by one of these individuals. And this 23-year-old girl, when, they told Jeffrey Epstein about her. Apparently, she agreed to bring the girls to him, and he told that 23-year-old girl, and he told her, the younger the better. She brought a 23-year-old girl to give him a massage. He told her that she was too old and wanted somebody younger. 23 years old, too young for Jeffrey Epstein. For a massage. Strange. And when you go to page 62, again, this details exactly what Epstein was paying these girls specifically to bring in more girls. How much money were you getting paid? She was getting paid approximately $200 for every girl she brought in. Just one time per girl, every time she brought a girl in, she was given $200 in cash, she details. On page 65, detectives call one of the other victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Again, I'm assuming they got this contact based on the trash pull that we just detailed. This victim, as soon as the detectives called, sadly, this victim lost it on the phone. She began crying, explained that she had been to his house hundreds of times, started going through it since she was 16 years of age. She said she was offered $200 for 30 minutes of work. She was introduced to him by a friend. Again, what all of these other victims are claiming as well. And then she would perform these massages on him naked at his home, she details, while on the phone with one of these detectives, allegedly. Now, let's bring in another assistant who is named in these documents. So there's Sarah, we mentioned earlier in all of this. Now there's a girl named Nadia. And apparently Nadia is somebody who is not American. She was flown in from a different country, Yugoslavia. And she was brought into the United States. And this is apparently his words. She explained that he had brought her from Yugoslavia to the United States to be his sex slave. Again, he calls her the assistant. Now, it's interesting because this is all, it goes into the cover up. But again, uh, the detective is saying specifically, were you ever able to confirm who she really was? I know that she is here on a visa and it's a modeling visa. You don't know the purpose of her, pretty much her stay. Yes, okay. So she's here from a visa. What did she describe, I guess, as the sexual acts? He introduced Nadia into a routine. So it became a threesome at some point. Right. So he was literally pinning Nadia and any of these victims up to engage in sexual acts for the two of them together. Sometimes he would participate in it, or sometimes he was asked them to touch his sex slave, as they refer to her as, and these girls would, and he'd give them extra money if they touched her. It is repulsive. It is disgusting. He would also ask them to perform oral sex on her, and some of them did in fact refuse. So that's on that page right there. That is on page 69 of all of this. Okay, and then we're gonna go head over to page 70. This one quite strange. So again, this is all kind of the same testimony, the same theme here, regarding some of these girls, rejecting it and saying, he was it always just the masturbating in front of you and the sex act, or in front of the victims and the sex acts with Nadia, or was there any additional sex acts with Jeffrey Epstein? It was explained that at one point towards the end, prior to blank, a victim turning 18, it was previously spoken that there was no vaginal penetration by Epstein. She stated that Mr. Epstein had a disformed penis and did not want to have any kind of intercourse with him. So that's the victim saying she didn't want to do it because there was something wrong with his penis. It was after one of the, again, where they had purchased sex toys. They introduced sex toys with Nadia, and Epstein watched and masturbated. And the reason why this is so important is when they did actually raid Epstein's home in Palm Beach, those sex toys were not in his possession. They were actually found in the assistant/sex slave's room. Again, he continues to distance himself from it by pretending like he wasn't supposed to know that they were not 18. He had their assistant ask, and then he made the assistant do the linkage too with a lot of these girls. And then when they did raid his home, these sex toys were not in his room. They were in the sex slave's room. And so that's really important to note there. This is also disturbing. All right, so let's head over to page 72. Again, one of those girls that was raped, the one that we talked about before her 18th birthday, the day before her 18th birthday, after he forcefully entered her, he paid her $1,000 in cash, allegedly. And then she also received a rental car. That rental car came from Dollar Rental Car. It was a blue Dodge Neon. It was previously one of the houseman he rented it for. Did she ever make a sexual battery claim? Again, we talked about that girl who was raped the day before her 18th birthday, never filed charges. Now, this is really, really interesting because this has to do with one of the Epstein housekeepers, and that's on page 77. And on page 77, the Epstein housekeeper is somebody named Alfredo Rodriguez. Now, he apparently has daughters of the ages of all of these victims that were coming in and out of the house, and he thought it was very suspicious. And so what he did is he actually started taking notes, and he kind of created a journal. And in that journal, he would document a lot of these girls who were entering in and out of the home, and just kind of kept it near bay just in case he ever needed it. And so that's really interesting because, prosecutors really did rely on some of his notes to kind of steer them in the right direction. Now, He did detail that he did witness not the actual sex acts taking place, but he just noticed that it was strange that all of these girls were coming in and out. And at one point, he actually does call law enforcement because he notices a strange car in Epstein's driveway, which happens to be another young girl collecting money allegedly. The girls, well, when the police are there, the girl is trying to collect her money. She's in her car. Her mother suddenly calls her, and the mom is going back and forth. And the girl's like, listen, mom, I'm in school. I can't talk right now, and hangs up. But obviously, the police officer knew that she was lying at that time. There was no arrest made during that incident, but it was another just instance that this housekeeper knew something was going wrong and wanted to get law enforcement involved. Now, those are some of the key details. And like I just stated to you folks, if you want to read it yourself, I'm going to make it available. I'm going to have the full link so you could go through the 176 pages yourself. But I'm also going to have these sections drafted up on my Substack page. So when you head over to BriannaMorello.com, you're going to be able to look at all of that for yourself, and you guys can examine it yourself. But I want to get to one of the key players in all of this. And that key player is Alex Acosta. At the time, he was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of, obviously, the Southern area, the district area of Florida. And as many of you guys know, Alex Acosta, and he infuriates me, we'll get to that in a moment, but he was the one who had to approve the plea agreement. He had to push this forward because he is obviously the U.S. attorney in the area. But many of you guys are very familiar with it. He was the Secretary of Labor under the Trump administration, and he was forced to resign after all of these details came out, rightfully so, right? This man had no reason to, after knowing all of this for 2 years now, gave a plea deal to Jeffrey Epstein. It should never happen in the first place. I mean, the poor victim, the one who came forward and said, he raped me the day before my 18th birthday after she told and disclosed the fact that she was going to turn 18. The fact that they still went forward and gave him a plea agreement, which resulted in him just spending 1.5 years in a Palm Beach County jail system, in which he was allowed to go to his office on most days as part of his work release program, followed by a year of house arrest, which obviously it's nothing, and it would require him to register as a sex offender, is a slap on the wrist for just the limited amount of victims that we heard from. There were more. We know there were more. But they intentionally pumped the brakes on all of this. Now, again, many of you guys are probably like, well, where is Alex Acosta right now? What is he doing? Has he been disbarred? There was an entire investigation that was done by the Department of Justice back in 2020. The results came out of it and pretty much said that the former labor secretary had just exercised poor judgment during his investigation of Epstein. But in fact, that the top prosecutor in Florida really didn't engage any professional misconduct. They instead just said that it was just a silly little mistake. And they just kind of wrote it all off. It's infuriating because when you've read through all of this, and you guys, I'm going to let you guys read through it. So if it's so graphic, it's really hard for me to have to sit here in detail for you guys. But when you're reading through all of this testimony and you see this transcript, you know that there were so many other people that if you actually prosecuted Epstein to the full extent of the law, you would have dug up a mountain of evidence against this man. And you would have been able to prosecute him and put him in jail for a significant amount of time. But instead they didn't. And I guess the question is why? And a lot of us have our suspicions, right? We all know the stories that come after this as to why our federal government decided not to hold one of the biggest pedophiles in our nation's history accountable for his actions. And well, some say he used it to his advantage. Was later seen in several photos hanging out with all these politicians and hanging out with all these celebrities. It is infuriating to see the fact that Alex Acosta did really nothing to this man. That he was able to just get a slap on the wrist knowing that young girls here where I live in Palm Beach were raped. This grand jury transcript was never going to see the day of light because, well, there was one media outlet, I think it was the Palm Beach Post, that fought tooth and nail to get this out there. And they tried. They tried their hardest to make sure that they could not get access to this transcript. But thankfully, Florida Republicans did step up and they did pass legislation to make sure that the courts had a rule in favor to make this public record. So now we know, based on the grand jury report, the grand jury transcripts, I should say, that Alex Acosta, the man you see right now on your screen, knew that young girls were raped by Jeffrey Epstein, and he decided to give him a slap on the wrist. And the Department of Justice, of course they did. They had his back in all of this. It's infuriating, but it happened. And we sit here and continue to wait for all of obviously Epstein's list and his guest list and to see who's actually coming in and out of his mansion, because many of us have heard names, but we have not actually seen any evidence of who is going in and out. So we're going to continue to wait, but they can't continue to hide this for long. They have to release all of this. And people like Alex Acosta need to have to publicly answer to these questions. Why did you give him this plea deal? Did somebody at the federal government call you and tell you to give him this plea deal? Were you ever threatened if you did not comply with giving him this plea deal? What happened? Who was in the room when you gave him this plea deal? Were there any offers that were not publicly made available to the public regarding this plea agreement? Things like maybe if you help get other people involved in this and you record it and you film it, maybe we'll give you the sweet plea deal and you won't spend the rest of your life in prison. Now, many of us know how all this obviously ended for Jeffrey Epstein, but we have questions and people need to be held accountable. So we'll continue to report on all of this, folks. And this report is specifically just on that grand jury transcript, which I just mentioned to you folks. It is going to be made available on my Substack page tonight, so you guys could read it at length. And that will be free. There will be no charge for that, of course. So you guys can head on over and take a look at that. If you enjoyed that segment, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We have a ton of exclusive content coming your way very, very soon. And if you're looking to support my work as an independent journalist, the best way to do so is over at supportbre.com. That's supportbre.com. That's where you can make a one-time donation or become a monthly donor. And like I mentioned, I am my own journalist. I don't answer to any kind of corporate media outlets or any big, let's just say big pharma at this point. And it's because I'm funded by you guys. So we greatly appreciate whatever you give over at supportbre.com. There's a great sale going on right now over at mypillow.com, and you got to check it out. It's the $25 extravaganza Mike Lindell has just put together. There are so many great offers, even things that are actually less than $25 right now on his website. So many items that you probably love, that you probably need new ones of, or just more of, or gifts maybe. It's all on sale. Go over right now to mypillow.com and use promo code BRE, that's BRE, to save up to 66% off. Now, I got to tell you, there's a lot of pillows, there's a lot of sandals, a lot of towels, all great items on sale right now. And to secure those savings, you got to use that promo code BRE, that's BRE, to save up to 66%, I should say. So use promo code BRE for that up to 66% off in savings. And if you enjoyed that segment, make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to see the news before it becomes the news, you have to subscribe to our channel. And well, if you have a liberal friend that you're looking to save, make sure you share this content with them.